Okay, so hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our session today on engaging with the Behavioral Science Group. This is the second event of UN Behavioral Science Week 2025. Well, technically a pre-week event, but we've had a few already. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mary McLennan. I lead behavioral science in the Secretary General's office, and I also lead an initiative called the UN Behavioral Science Group, which we'll talk a lot about today. So I'm excited to introduce you to all the colleagues who'll be with us, the team, and what we're doing. Before we do that, I just wanted to speak just a little bit about the week. Um, all right, having trouble uh, sharing slides here. Okay, moving between slides. Let me stop sharing for a second and reshare. Apologies. Um, let's see those. I might just stay in this format. Um, Okay, hopefully that works. So as I mentioned, it's Behavioral Science Week. Kicking us off the second event, we have 46 entities with us this year, so a lot compared to previous years. We started 7 years ago with about 3 or 4, and now we're up to where we are now. So this is, again, lots to come over the course of the next week. So we have a session, high-level sessions actually on Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern. So lots of really interesting speakers there when it comes to behavioral science and data and AI. They were also having some discussions around embedding behavioral science on Monday, through to how to use evidence on Tuesday, AI and behavioral science on Wednesday. So lots to check out throughout the week, lots of case study examples to these expos. So if you haven't seen the agenda yet, probably have if you're here, but I would encourage you to check it out and to join us for what's to come over the next number of days. All right, so just a little bit about the group itself, and I'll cover more detail in some slides shortly. But we bring together over 7,000 members from over 70 entities in 150 countries. So there's a lot of interest and demand and need for behavioral science across the UN, and we'll explore a little bit about that today. So I'll go into details there, but I also wanted to say here why we're part of this is why we're doing a lot of this is because we are part of this UN 2.0 quintet of change. So these are 5 areas Secretary General has deemed important for the UN to really be effective in the 21st century and nimble to really deliver on the big challenges of today. And behavioral science is one of those, alongside data, digital transformation, innovation, foresight as well. So lots there to unpack. And again, I'll cover that a bit more shortly, but we have a number of resources. And maybe drop those in the chat for you now for you to kind of take a look at, check out and see throughout the session and explore as we have more conversations. So throughout today's webinar, it's pretty interactive. It's relatively informal as well. There's quite a lot of ways you can engage with us. But throughout, if you have questions, we please ask that you put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And you can also upvote questions of your colleagues too if you don't have one yourself. So feel free to use that. We don't have the chat enabled. It just keeps things simpler with the Q&A, but there'll be other ways to engage with us. So the Q&A box, as well as another tool that we'll share with you shortly. All right. Okay, so today's speakers, there's me along with the team who works with us on behavioral science in the group. So we will go through quite a bit more detail with them all shortly. But this is just the team here. You get a sense of the different backgrounds, different people, and we can do that as well. So yeah, we'll go into them. But what I'm going to start with here is just a little bit of context in terms of behavioral science in the UN and the Behavioral Science Group, and then we'll hear from the team, and then we'll have a bunch of interactive questions and activities with you. So stay. We'll get to the more interaction, but I just want to set the scene with a few slides here. So behavioral science across the UN. Good chance you know what behavioral science is if you're here, but just sort of setting the context here. Why is behavioral science important? So behavior change is really is a critical tool to really achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and lots of mandates of the UN. From health, you think about better nutrition, medication adherence, vaccination uptake. Colleagues are all working in these spaces, applying behavioral science, reflecting on it overall. Social norms and gender, sustainable consumption, peace and security, thinking about drivers of violent extremism. So there's lots of different spaces where behaviors are really important and where behavioral science can come into play. So a little bit here on like what is behavioral science and how we specifically define it across the UN. So we talk about it as an evidence-based understanding of how people actually respond to policies, programs, and incentives. So it's not about making assumptions about human behavior and sort of thinking, traditionally what we can expect people to do from more used in traditional methods. We take a bit of a deeper dive understanding of the context to really understand what works and the realities of different people in different countries and contexts and situations. So within that, there are kind of two broad areas. So the first is it's behavioral science brings together psychology, sociology, anthropology, economics, and all these really diverse fields to say something about human behavior that's pretty novel and new that we don't always reflect upon in our work. And the second part of behavioral science application is that we test where possible to really understand what works. So even though we have all these theories about human behavior, what works in Cape Town might not work in Buenos Aires, might not work in somewhere else. So we need to test to really understand those elements too. So there'll be lots throughout the week on that, lots of examples, lots of case studies, lots of deep dive into what behavioral science is. But I'll stop there for now and just kind of zoom out from that and reflect upon the landscape when it comes to behavioral science around the world. So it's a growing field. There's lots happening in the UN, but there's also a lot happening outside. There are currently over 600 behavioral public policy bodies, and lots of growth over the last 10 years. It's been really, really amazing to see. And that being said, a lot of the growth, most of it, 5 times as much of it, has been in the global north compared to the global south. So there's really a lot of need and importance of the discussions that we're having in the UN in particular to bring behavioral science into different parts of the world that maybe conversations that aren't being had elsewhere. Okay, so I mentioned before this UN 2.0 quintet of change. These are 5 areas the Secretary General has deemed important for the UN to be effective in the modern realities of the world that we live in today. So just to say, it's about a forward-thinking culture. So it's not about doing these things for, innovation or for the sake of doing them. It's really about how do we change the way that the UN colleagues in the UN and partners change the way that they do applying these 5 areas. So what this has been great. It's enabled us to have access to very amazing parts of the UN, impact, reach, and scale in ways that we haven't had until now within the UN and behavioral science. So it's been a really kind of cornerstone of a lot of the work that we've done over the last number of years. And having that senior level support has really driven a lot of the initiatives that we've done, at least in the UN. So the group itself, we were founded in 2019. Really as a community within the UN Innovation Network. My colleague Johanna Joachim is not with us today, but she and I we did this together. She's been with us along the journey. So essentially, we started out with a handful of interested entities in our first Behavioral Science Week back then, and now we've grown to over 7,000 members and said over 70 entities in 150 countries. So what we do as a group, our bigger picture aims are to really further the discipline of behavioral science. So it's really amazing to see from our vantage point across the UN and across the world what colleagues are doing to reflect upon behavioral science, to apply behavioral science, and we have that view. Also helping with the adoption and really taking it up. So helping colleagues go from their first step of understanding what behavioral science is to doing more, maybe forming some partnerships and taking things forward. And then through as well towards implementation and actually doing bigger projects and seeing larger behavioral science projects taken forward. So we work with colleagues across that spectrum from the very beginning stages through to more advanced stages of understanding, also of degree of work as well. So we do a lot there. We hold discussions like these in Behavioral Science Week and also throughout the year. We have publications, and so we've put in the chat. You can check a number of them out. From the Secretary General's guidance on behavioral science, the UN Behavioral Science Report, to the UN Behavioral Science Review. So there's lots of kind of key documents and publications that just really tell the story of a lot more than we could share in the hour with you today. And then we also have a fellowship program where we bring behavioral scientists from the global north and south into the UN to actually work on projects. So we have a few of our fellows with us today, so you can hear from them and their experiences and what it's like to go from the outside the UN inside the UN and to work on projects. And those projects are in collaboration with different UN entities. So for instance, previously we've had fellows work with the International Labour Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the UN office in Geneva, working on projects like increasing domestic worker registration to Social Security, thinking about sludge reduction or administrative burden reduction in the UN with the application of behavioral science. So lots of really, really interesting spaces to dive into. Okay, so now kind of zooming out at our bigger picture, what we do is that we foster exchange and collaboration. We have thought leadership with our publications. We have our fellowship program where we bring colleagues into the UN. And we also have ways in which we support entities more systematically. So entities which are looking to do this more than just a pilot project, or how do they think about, embedding it into a plan that they have or a strategy that they have. We also have those kind of conversations too. And then outside of that, we hold more tailored learning and capacity building sessions for colleagues who are interested. But there's actually a session during Behavioral Science Week on capacity building when it comes to behavioral science, and there'll be lots more discussed there about that topic and how different entities are doing it as well. Okay, so why this works? How do we work and what we do? So as I mentioned a few times now, we're over 70 UN entities. These are just a handful, by no means representative. These are just a few we put on the slide today. And we also work with member states and governments. So these are just a few countries we've worked with over the years, either in consultations or on projects. Really, it's important that we keep that corridor open to the way the UN works and functions. Member states are obviously critical to the work that we do. And then thirdly, here, academia. So as I mentioned, we bring fellows in. We also have connections to different professors and other forms of academia too. There's just a few we've collaborated with more recently. And then speakers. We've been fortunate over the years to have some really, really amazing speakers from the behavioral science field, from governments, as well as the UN, including Nobel Prize winners and very senior colleagues in the UN as well, who've offered some really insightful remarks. So we have connected to the key areas, and then it's how do we take this forward from there. So this is the team, as I mentioned before. We'll introduce ourselves shortly. You'll hear from them about what they do and who they are. And I think that'll give you a much better flavor for the work that we do, as opposed to me kind of running over the top line of areas of work. So I'll turn it over to them in a second, but I'll just conclude here with a little bit about kind of a summary on where we came from and kind of where we're heading. So I mentioned we started in 2019, but there's been behavioral science going on since the early 2010s in the UN. We found instances and examples of it. So we're by no means the first people to do this, but we were the first to kind of come together and coalesce around that time. Presented to the Secretary General, had various other foundational meetings. Then we got the Secretary General's guidance note and the UN Behavioral Science Report, which are kind of our first few foundational pieces. And then from there, we launched our fellowship, and then we really kind of took off with really getting these solidified signals of support. So we have a practitioner's guide to getting started, and we also have been featured in a brief from the Secretary General on UN 2.0. It's one of only 13 briefs he published. We also, behavioral science and UN 2.0 is in the Pact for the Future, which was passed in the General Assembly last September. So lots of kind of really big symbols and signs of support from the UN, which is a kind of a lot of the foundational pieces. And then from there, we've done lots of things across the group, like we've think subgroups, thinking about different areas to go of topics. So you'll see throughout the week, AI and data is a big one. Doing more training courses, growing the group, integrating into strategic plans of entities. So lots of kind of spaces that we're into now. So there's lots more to come in the future. I won't go to that, but just to say, there's lots happening across the UN in terms of behavioral science, and we're kind of a space to coalesce and bring it together. So there's, as I mentioned, some of the bigger topics are health and climate and gender. Also, what it's like to do behavioral science in the Global South is a big topic that we are exploring too, along with AI and other spaces as well. So hopefully that kind of gives you a bigger picture view of what we do and where we're heading. And so we have the links already in the chat for you. And here are some more email addresses if you want to kind of connect with us. But for now, I'll stop sharing here. And I think maybe we'll go over to a few questions to hear from all of you, and then we'll go to the team to introduce them. So Vani, did you want to share the questions? Or should we go to the team first? Okay, so in the chat, you'll see a Mentimeter link. If you click on that, it'll get you to a few questions. The first question is, let me screen share this now. Where are you joining us from today? So if you can, on the right of the screen, you'll see a little black dot. Oh, thank you, Bonnie, sharing. You'll see a dot on the right of your screen on a map. If you move that to where your country is and then click submit, we can start to get a sense of where everyone's coming from today. Okay, so definitely already global. Let's see right off the bat. There's a lot of different spaces and countries. Okay, so we're seeing lots from Europe, from Asia. Um, Only a couple from America. I think it's still maybe a little early in the States. From Canada, it's good representation. Yeah, so from all over the world. Really curious to hear from your experiences and what it's like to think about behavioral science and to join us today. Um, okay, let's see if I can choose a country. Uh, does anybody, okay, we'll have more discussion as we go to see that, but look at lots of Europe representation and yeah, pretty global. This is great. Good views all around. Okay, so I think we're still answering. I think we're done answering. Australia too. Wow. Wow, Australia. This is great. Does anybody want to like unmute themselves and say where they're from? I don't know if we can do this. I need to allow you to talk. Um, Rachel, do you want to unmute yourself? I can unmute you actually. Uh, Sorry, I just need to find you. Two others. Um, Great, Rachel. Do you want to? Yes. And where are you from? Yes.
All right. So hi everyone. This is Rachel Mutuku, based out of Nairobi, Kenya. So Africa. I guess. So happy to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks for that. Are you okay? Elena, we'll hear from a couple people. Elena, where are you calling from? And then we'll go to our next question. Elena, yes, where are you from today? Oh, oh, maybe it's okay. We're having a bit of challenging unmuting Elena. Okay, let's maybe on Russia. No. Okay, maybe we'll go to our next question then if we're having a bit of trouble here. Um, Great. Okay, maybe in Russia, Finland, if you want to, we'll get to you shortly. Our next question is
Can you hear
where
me?
yes, we can hear you in Russia. Where
Oh,
are you?
sorry.
Yes, where are you calling us from today?
I'm from UK.
Ah, you're in the UK. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, great. Thanks for joining
no
us.
worries.
Okay, so now we have our next question coming. Who's in the room? So where are you calling from? Are you in the UN? Are you from academia, private sector, civil society, students, government? Okay, good mix as well. Lots of academia in the UN. So this is actually pretty good representation, I think, of what we normally get in Behavioral Science Week. Lots of UN and academia. Um, okay, cool. Okay, so this is good. El Elena, did you want to mute yourself? Tell us where you're from, which or not to. Okay. Okay, so let's maybe keep going with our questions then. So we have from all over the world, we have a good mix, lots of academia, lots of the UN, which is nice, and private sector, civil society, and government too. Okay, so let's go to our next question. What is your primary area of work? So is there an area where you normally focus? It doesn't need to be all of your work, but is there one space where you focus more? Okay, so lots on governance. Oh, health, climate, sorry, climate and environment. Interesting. Okay, a good mix, but still lots of a little bit of balance. So we have lots in governance and policy, education, climate, environment. I'm curious about who the others are. Tech and innovation. Interesting. Um, cool. Okay, this is nice. We have again, a good mix here. Looks like the SDG wheel is almost coming up. Nice. Okay. Okay, so we'll hear from all of you shortly. We're going to have more conversations about this. We want to hear about, what you're interested in, why. But I think this is good. Lots of health and climate, lots of tech and innovation, and then also some governance and policy. Okay, cool. Now maybe on to our last question before we get to our team. What does behavioral science mean to you? So I gave you a definition that, we kind of think about in the UN in a word or two. In a word, what is our prompt? In a word? One word, let's say. What does it mean to you? We talked about it being different principles from different fields, academic fields. It could be, it could be change, could be, what are we doing with it? We'll dive into this in our discussions, but just before we get going, it might be nice to think through where are we coming to this conversation with and what we think about overall. Okay, I see realism, nudges, opportunity. Yeah, this is all really relevant to what we're trying to do in the UN. Choice architecture. I love the more like technical definitions coming up. Evidence-based and change. Really cool. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Does anybody want to? Okay. Cool. I'll give it a second there. Does anybody on the team maybe want to come in and comment or say, or I don't know. What am I? Okay. Okay. Cool. Let's keep this going. If we can keep this open, Vani, that'd be great. We can maybe keep collecting some responses there as we go. We can maybe come back to this question of where are we heading? What does it mean to everybody? Got innovation, impact, change. Evidence-based understanding. This is all, very much time for conversations. Okay, cool. So we'll keep this open. So if you want to still submit things, continue to do so. But for now, maybe we're going to turn it over to the team to say a few words about themselves, and then we'll come back to you for some more questions. So with that, maybe everyone can turn on their cameras and just so what I can do, so I don't know what order do you want to do this? Maybe Joey, do you want to go first and just say a few words about yourself and what you do? We'll start with our fellows and then we'll go to kind of other members of the team. So Joey, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here. Thanks, Mary. So my name is Joseph Sherlock. No one actually calls me that. They call me Joey. Lovely to be here. I'm an assistant professor at King's College London, and have been in behavioral science for about a decade, bit more, probably about 12 years. And I am really focused on using behavioral science as a vehicle for innovation. So thinking about it as an approach to helping us solve problems, using the methods that behavioral science gives us to define and understand problems and then help us develop solutions to those problems. And ultimately getting to the point where we can run experiments, ideally field experiments, where we test whether or not the solutions work. So taking that sort of behavioral approach ultimately to innovation, and innovation in public policy and in civic society. Conceptually, I focus on a few areas. One is democracy and governance, so things like trust in elections, misinformation around elections, but also governance from for instance, a tax perspective, thinking about how we shape tax policy and process. The second sort of big bucket that I focus on is sustainability. So I've done a lot of work in transportation and some in waste management and perceptions around sustainability and climate change, et cetera. And then the last bucket is kind of experimental. It's a little meta. It's the science of behavioral science. So, for my part, I've been an applied behavioral scientist for a long time. It's a growing field. We're 15 years old as an applied field, at least. And I think we're still figuring out the best ways for us to do things. And so my third area of interest is in what is the best way for us to partner with organizations to run field experiments? What is the best way to influence policymakers to do the things that we know work, et cetera, et cetera. So that's me. I've been working with Mary sort of adjacently for a while and a fellow just for the last few months in 2025. Great to be here. Lovely to meet you all. Back to you.
Great, thanks for that, Joey. So lots of research background. Just going through some of the questions. There's lots of kind of ideas about how do we work with researchers, how do we engage with them. So maybe we can go into a bit about that as we go down. Okay, so maybe next over to Robin, who's quite new. I just want to start with the fellows. Just say a few words about yourself and kind of what you're doing.
Sure. Yes, thanks for having me. I'm Robin. I am a PhD student, and I have a bit of a background in behavioral science and psychology. Most recently, over the past years, I've been more interested also in how we can use what we know about human behavior to understand human computer interaction, and especially now human AI interaction. So basically, the idea is that we work a lot on understanding how humans interact, how they like or don't like each other, and in the future, many of our interactions, I assume, will be increasingly with non-human actors. I mean, for some of us, maybe on a daily basis already today, we talk more to a chatbot. So if you assume that this behavior is a bit different between, like human chatbot interactions, what does it do to our psychology, to our behavior, and also to human interactions? So this is a part I'll be focusing on in the fellowship as well. And the second part is that I'm quite interested in how we can build more bridges between academia and the UN. And this is something also, because I saw there's quite a few academics and students in this call as well. So if you have any ideas or wishes or things that you think, okay, I think that would be cool, we should do this more, and maybe drop this in the Q&A. I'll be taking some notes as well, because I think the idea is really over the next months to build more connections and ways to collaborate between students, academics, and the UN Behavioural Science Group.
Great, thanks for that, Robin. So lots to do with academia and practice for sure. Okay, so maybe next over to Vani, who's been helping us with the slides and everything.
Thanks, Mary. Hi, all. My name is Vani. I'm a master's student at the Parsons School of Design in New York, and I help the team with their communication and design needs. Some of the projects that I worked on so far have been around rebranding the visual identity of the group for our website or reports or any other outreach collaterals, and also developing communication strategies to provide smoother and more tailored experiences for stakeholders that collaborate with us. In my experience, working with the group has been a very startup-like ecosystem where we are super collaborative, very experimental with our ideas, iterative in our process, and very quick to adapt, which I relate to a lot because I have a background with entrepreneurship. And I was particularly inclined to work around behavioral science since a lot of the methodology used overlaps with how solutions or strategies for any area of work are designed using design thinking and applying the design process. And from my understanding and what I've understood so far of behavioral science and design thinking going together, put more simply, design-based interventions are like levers to facilitate behavioral change through an evidence-based and very behavioral science-driven logic. And I'm very appreciative of how much I get to engage with problems with this very multidisciplinary lens. And a major chunk of my work outside the UN has been around researching and designing behavioral change interventions for climate disaster preparedness and adaptation, and understanding these challenges from a grassroots to systemic level. Now becoming increasingly interested in understanding how emerging technologies like XR or AI could be plugged into these challenges to leverage behavioral data to bridge individual actions to, say, policy level decisions. So that's about me.
Great, thanks for that, Vani. We got some thumbs up with the AI, XR. I think this is where the conversations will be going throughout the week as well. Great. Okay, so we got some design, we got some research. So we'll hear some more backgrounds. Maybe Aishwarya, over to you next.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Aishwarya. My background is in behavioral economics and broadly in economics. And for the past 2 years, I've been a pre-doc at a research institute at Cambridge, working on applied behavioral science projects. My particular interest is in how behavioral insights can support pro-social and pro-environmental decision-making, which is bulk of what the institution I work at focuses on. And similar to others on the team, I'm interested in bridging this gap between research and practice, and also expanding the application of behavioral science in the global south, which is where I'm from. So that's where it comes from. So these pursuits are what brought me here to the team. And at the UN Behavioural Science Group, my focus has been on exploring how to strengthen partnerships with academia, entities, individuals. So basically, most of you on this call. And as the application of behavioral science is growing within the UN system and beyond, as we've seen through what Mary has shown me today, it becomes even more important to collaborate effectively so that we can expand this already pretty broad sense of research that is there right now, and for also streamlining the processes, and then to be able to translate this into findings and policy relevant equations. So especially interested in hearing more from all of you and look forward to engaging with you.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Yeah, lots of different ways we've been thinking about how to bring people into the group in more meaningful ways. We can hopefully unpack that today. Okay, so next maybe over to Matteo.
Sure, thanks, Mary. Hello, everyone. My name is Mateo Santillan. I'm from Argentina. I'm an applied behavioral scientist as well. I work in several projects in Argentina and in the region. Applying behavioral science to public policies, and my aim is to introduce more and improve the behavioral science applications in public policy, because we know that behavioral science they can be a fundamental tool to improve the effectiveness of public policies. So that's part of what I'm doing here at the UN group. I'm helping to conduct a research on trying to understand how we can improve that applications of behavioral science. And aligned with that, some of my interests are related to ways to expand behavioral science beyond just nudges and maybe just push, how to have a broader perspective of behavioral science. Heterogeneous effects on behavioral science applications, understanding better the mechanisms in order to make, again, our interventions better and in order to have more meaningful impact in society. So that's all. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that, Matteo. Yeah, lots of interesting perspectives from around the world and backgrounds and experiences. So yeah, we'll dive into it. Okay, so second to last, Nikita, over to you to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. I am Nikita. I am currently an MBA candidate at the Wharton School and come from a business background, so professionally a management consultant. And my role within the team here is to help with the strategy of the Behavioral Science Group and specifically work on some partnerships and fundraising. And then from a behavioral science angle, personally interested in behavioral science's role within organizational strategy and managerial decision-making. So basically, how do we use behavioral science to make decisions within for-profit and nonprofit contexts that help drive behavior to drive outcomes? So kind of drawing that line throughout those and seeing how we can blend those different disciplines into creating actionable outcomes. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nikita. So you see a big spectrum, and then last but not least, over to Timon. Please come in.
Thank you, Mary. Hi, everyone. My name is Timon Bati, and I'm currently based in Nairobi, and I support the UN Innovation Network with comms and community management activities, of which the UN BeSci is a part of. So yeah, happy to connect and happy to be here.
Great, thank you, Timon. So that's the team. So we've done a quick tour of kind of who they are, what their roles are in the UN. We have the researchers, people with more business background, communications background, design background, policy background. So it kind of is, I don't think, too dissimilar to many behavioral science teams around the world. But okay, so with that, maybe does anybody want to say anything before we go into our next questions, or are we gonna keep going, have more interaction with our colleagues? Okay, let's do that. So maybe let's go back to our questions, Vani, into our Mentimeter. So if we put that in the chat again, just in case people may have closed it. Do that as well. Into our next question, which really gets at kind of some of the questions I'm seeing in the chat. So it's a word cloud, but I will call on you now if you depending on what you put in there. So what are some of the key challenges or successes your organization's challenges that your organization faces in collaborating with behavioral scientists or in practice, right? So people like ourselves. Joey and Robin mentioned a few challenges they have from coming from academia, engaging with the UN. What are some challenges that you faced, or raising awareness for the benefits of behavioral science? Yes, that's obviously really key and critical. funding to do this. Of course, you know, what is the value of behavioral science? So it kind of relates to the first point there. Data collection. Yes, that's one thing, you know, the pros and cons of being in the UN. We have lots of data, but then also using that data is not always straightforward. Lack of expertise within the organization. Yeah, finding the right people, the right spaces, culture to do this, getting business leaders buy-in, data, lots of data collection. I feel like that's definitely a sticking point for people. Raising awareness about BeSci. Okay, I'm seeing some groupings here. Maybe we'll give it a few moments, then I think we can start some voting around this to see what we think are some of the main sticking points. So monitoring evaluation frameworks, long-term follow-up of impact. This came up in a webinar yesterday we had. Academia collaborating, politics and different priorities of leadership. So lots of kind of buy-in stuff. Okay. Maybe if we go to the voting. I mean, people are still adding. Okay. Oh, we'll go to voting. Sorting. So we'll have. Okay. So we've seen some grouping here. Oh. Okay. Now you can vote on those. So if you go to here, so we have lack of expertise is a big one, data collection, funding challenges, cultural differences, raising awareness. You can vote on these. If you have 5 votes, you could put out of the 7. So if you complete that, then we can see where there's a little bit of accumulation of responses. So yeah, so lack of expertise, data challenges, funding challenges, cultural differences, raising awareness, ethical considerations. 5 people voted. Okay, we might need some more votes, or else we're gonna be stuck in this part. Okay, here we go. People are now they're rolling in. While we wait, does the team have any comments on these 5 areas, 7 areas?
It strikes me that part of what is maybe valuable from this session and what follows is the sort of linking up partners, people who are interested to collaborate with those who have, you know, for instance, data skills or expertise. And so part of the value from this might be the connections that are made in the session, but also maybe following the session.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, I think there's data collection came up several times, and I think I'm interested into what parts of that are the issue. Is it more like the financing of that? Is it that it's a long process to collect data and maybe to continue doing it to get more nuance on that? Because I think it's an interesting, important point, and the solutions differ a lot depending on what part of the data collection process is the issue. So it'd be interesting to discuss that a bit more.
Mm-hmm. For sure, what that means could mean so many different things in different contexts. Any thoughts on like maybe raising awareness, Nikita, or anything around like in an organization of doing this? Any kind of organizational reflections on the responses so far? Yeah. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Nikita. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just I think it's the challenges definitely kind of resonate, I think, both from a practitioner lens, but also within designing organization policies and driving organizational behavior for sure.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, so lack of expertise by far has come out on top here in terms of actually doing this, which is interesting, and where you're from, but I think it's a common response in the UN. Funding challenges, pretty much the same as almost data challenges, Robin. So it's interesting that it's not only money, it's also access to the right information. Cultural differences, raising awareness, and then other responses. So yes, maybe if we go back up to the top, sorry, the lack of expertise. Is there somebody who voted that highly? Oh, lots of likes. We have, if you'd like to raise your hand, we're still figuring out the way to do this. If you'd like to raise your hand, maybe you could come in and say a few words about it. Maybe you'll hear from someone from data collection next. But for now, would somebody who would like to raise their hand, not just, oh, okay, I think we've seen, um, Ariam or Marissa? Can we unmute? Would you like to? Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Hi, good morning. Thanks for this. For me, I think it's both it comes under lack of expertise, but it really comes into is the issue about practitioners. There's a lot of research. I've been in the field of AI now for a decade. I'm an AI ethicist, and I'm also a practicing educational psychologist. So I actually work in the field with people as well as studying it. I'm a researcher as well. And research is wonderful and it's really valuable and it's important. Simultaneously, I think really having people in the field, interacting with the people who are using this. I'm doing a huge amount about safety with AI, particularly in anthropomorphizing. So I think that it's really important that we're not just kind of studying it from a distance, from an adaptive leadership perspective, like from the balcony, but that we're really in the field, talking to people on a local level. How are they interacting this? How are their children being affected? So I'll leave it at that. But I think that for me, that's really a vital piece that I feel like is a little bit of a gap in many of the initiatives I've been involved with.
For sure. Thank you for that. Really just having the knowledge of the context of the people. It's so critical and so important. Thank you for that. Maybe we'll take one more on lack of expertise, and then maybe we'll go to a different one. Shrestha, I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Oh, talking, go for it.
Hi, thank you for getting me here. I feel in terms of lack of expertise, one problem that we face in academia is that we are experts in a way, but then the interdepartment or institutional kind of collaborations is really a challenge. And then getting people in terms of like in India, now this is coming in picture in terms of having professors of practice so that more and more practice related expertise comes into the forum of education really, but then understanding this lag is also again in terms of recognition as well, like there are experts but outside the field of academia that recognition has to be more stronger, so which is why I think that really needs a lacuna to be filled in. And coming from bodies like UN, there could be something coming it from an institutional level or an organizational level, like fellowships and all of those things. So yes.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, lots of ways to think about what expertise could be. Any comments from the team or thoughts on that?
If I may, one thing I would say that, as you mentioned as well, given our team or any of the other behavioral teams that you come across the world, one thing that ties them together is often that they're interdisciplinary. So this is something that I think academia in general has been employed, but more rigorously needs to facilitate interdepartmental communication, interdepartmental coordination and stuff. So that really boils down to facilitating conversations and again collaborating on projects and making that as simple as possible to do. It's something again that is probably easier said than done, but I do think conversations is a big thing to start it off.
For sure. I mean, yeah, we're still talking some broad terms here. There's a lot more to think about, but yeah, it starts with those kind of initial connections. Any other thoughts and reflections? Okay, maybe we'll call in some regarding data collection. If there's somebody who highly ranked that one and would like to share a little bit about what their challenges are, I think Helena.
Yes, hi. So one of the most persistent challenges I face is building genuine buy-in from the leadership for establishing a dedicated and robust behavioral science unit within our foundation. And while there is a broad recognition of the value that behavioral insights can bring, translating that acknowledgement into tangible support and institutional commitment has been a struggle a bit for me. And Also, the core issue, lies in the absence of the designated funding, especially for building a solid research component. And without this, it becomes quite difficult to generate the depth and quality of evidence needed to demonstrate impact convincingly. So that's kind of from my perspective here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, there's lots there to unpack. Yeah. Any comments from the team or things you'd like to say in response to that? Or any questions about what's come up on the data that you want to post to the group? No, that's fine.
Well,
Yeah.
just one thing on the data collection, because I brought it up before. I think to add to what Helena said, I think when I think about buy-in, it's also the buy-in of maybe finding out stuff or finding out things that don't work. I think often people and leaders don't want to like find things that work. And if you as a behavioral scientist collect some data and something doesn't work, this is also valuable insight, right? Sometimes it's more important to know what doesn't work. And I think that's something we have to get better at and translating to people that this is something we really need to message as a gain for the organization or whoever collects that data. It's not just about like this works. It's the opposite. Work helps as well. Can save a lot of money to do at least.
For sure. Yeah, it's not just the successes, the things that you learn as well from anything that you do. Okay, cool. There's lots here we could unpack, but maybe we can go to our next question, which relates to a lot of this, and kind of the things that are coming up already is how can we better engage with you? What kind of ways can we work with you? So we talked about some of the ways we could work on projects. There's lots of questions we can get in the Q&A shortly about ways to engage from academia and other spaces. But we also have things that we do. We have regular newsletters. So the link into the chat earlier was to join the Behavioral Science Group. So join the group if you haven't already. We can also have thematic conversations and discussions. We have joint webinars and events, informal networking, sharing experience, resources and case studies. So that might be interesting to academics in particular. Tailored support and assistance. So yeah, I think if you can go into the do your ranking, and then we'll see what ranks the highest. We can have a conversation around that. Okay, opportunities for collaboration. Yeah, it is interesting, right? Because there's creating a space, and then it's always the support that's needed to really foster that collaboration meaningfully. But yeah, so okay, so we're seeing quite a bit informal networking, exchanging resources and case studies, so lots of kind of knowledge exchange. Okay, any reflections on that from the team on kind of where people are going and heading? Yeah, go for it, Joey.
Yeah, it's a theme for me on this. I sort of brought this up a minute ago as well. It feels to me like the real value here is in connection, in connecting. That point around data is as much about connection as anything. It's about connecting those who have are running programs and are collecting administrative data or have access to the people we need to collect data from, with those who have the skills or time to be able to work with it and to run the experiment. And so it strikes me here that one of the things we might try and do going forward is to try and match between academics, between fellows, between people, those in the UN, with those on the ground running programs who need support and have interest in trying to do cool behavior projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. From the UN side, there are definitely lots of research questions and problems to tackle. So it's finding that space and also creating that environment to do, depending on what you want to do together, right? To do a whole full-on behavioral science project, it takes more than an introduction, but we can think about kind of how we can do that effectively with lots of people around the world. Any other reflections, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was thinking that sometimes building on what Shoy just said about connecting people, I've seen that many times there is a lot of data. I mean, of course, gathering data is always is hard, but sometimes there is already existing data for the administrative sector that is not published because it's not how many times the administrative sector works. But just because having a conversation with someone that works inside the government at any level can bring the information that certain types of data sets they already exist and they are being unused. So sometimes just because of bonding and connected with people, you realize that that some of the data is already existing, is already collected, and that of course, if we like we bridge it to other problems, for example, about funding. If the data is already existing, then the budget for the project might be super low because you don't need to gather the data yourself. But that kind of knowledge, the only way to have it is someone that or connected with someone that's work inside, in this case inside the government, or maybe in another kind of sectors, maybe work speaking with people that they work in another area of the same institution, for example. Because yeah, sometimes there are things that they are there, but we don't know that they are there. So just thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's lots there about how we can connect in different ways, not just people, but also resources and lots of things internally and externally as well. Okay, cool. So lots there to unpack. I think it's also a bit around informal exchange, sharing resources and case studies. So that's part of the function of Behavioral Science Greek, but we have more to share. We also, I should flag in the resources. We have the UN Behavioral Science Review, which is a publication which features case studies from across the UN, and we'll hopefully be doing a new one of those shortly. Okay, so anything else on this? Maybe we go to our last question, maybe open up for some overall Q&A. Let's do that then, Vani. Okay, so this is kind of a much broader question. What are some topics or areas the behavioral science group you think should prioritize, let's say, from your vantage point? So earlier we spoke about, coming from governments or the UN or from health or climate or gender, or, where should we be concentrating our efforts? It could just be something that you work on and you care passionately about, or your research, or your work innovation. Yeah, that's definitely a space we're hoping to tackle, as Joey mentioned earlier. SDGs, peace and conflict. Yeah, we'll hear some of this during the week. Sustainability, change management, equity. It could also be, it could be more specific. It could be like animal welfare or antimicrobial resistance, or it doesn't need to stay as general. It can get as specific or as general as you like. Okay, so we're seeing a spectrum from implementation research seems to be getting quite a lot. Sustainability and health. Yeah, that's a big one too. Okay, any reflections on this from the team? Any thoughts on kind of where people are focusing? No?
I think it's interesting and quite cool to see how there's kind of that variation between topic areas, so things like sustainability, or I see animal welfare in there, social justice, but also kind of more like functional areas. It's probably better terminology, but things like change management, and I see social entrepreneurship, so implementation research. So I think it's kind of interesting to see those two buckets, and I think going forward, something to delve into and on where those big connections are made between those functional areas and practice areas.
Yeah, for sure. How do we move this forward? How do we operationalize these things? Great, cool. Thanks for that. Did you want to come in, Aishwarya? Yeah.
Also seems like it's very representative of both UN 2.0 and the SDGs. So plenty to match up there.
Yeah, right in line with what we're trying to do. So this is great. Or I think a lot of us are on the same page here. Okay, cool. So that's great. In the last few minutes we have here, maybe we'll try to answer some questions in the Q&A. So I'll grab a few, but if colleagues in the call wanted to come in with anything, please do. So some of the ones that are a bit more recorded, are a bit more voted. Sorry, there's lots of different questions here. Maybe just exploring a little bit about Okay, maybe I'll answer some of them because they're maybe more for me. So there's questions around how do we work with academia? So how do the fellows happen? So right now, this is still fellowships for so far has been a pilot project. So it's been just a few entities, a few colleagues that we engage with. But so right now it's at the stages, but hopefully, as Joey said, we can kind of expand it going forward. Do we work with national governments to integrate behavioral science? We do. We do have some work in that space, and we're hoping to do more. We actually work more closely with internal UN entities to expand behavioral science than we do with national governments. But hopefully we'll do more in the future. Yeah. So there's a question around fellows' backgrounds. Maybe this is maybe for like the students and maybe for everyone, like psychology, economics, you come from different fields. Maybe for someone who's hoping to explore or come in to do behavioral science in a place like the UN, what kind of background would you expect to have? Maybe I'll turn that over to you while I find some more questions. Joey or Robin, do you have just somebody who wants to maybe work as a behavioral and as a fellow, what would you say in terms of background?
Background skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, so broadly, as a behavioral scientist, an applied behavioral scientist, I think you need skills and knowledge in a few areas. Firstly, there's definitely the do you understand behavioral science? So getting some experience, reading books or taking a master's course or an undergraduate course or one of the short courses. There's lots available, summer school type things. So knowledge in behavioral science, behavioral theory, that's definitely one category. Another category is methods and data. So behavioral science at its core is empirical, is experimental, and so understanding methods is important. That's actually both quantitative methods as well as sort of exploratory qualitative methods to help us understand problems and develop and prototype solutions. And then on the data side, there's also being able to manage a data set is important. So there's behavioral knowledge, methods, and data work. And then I think there's also a bucket here around design, being able to bring ideas to life. This would probably overlap a little bit with human-centered design, and that is a methodology. And so I think there's probably a third bucket there around design skills, design in a few ways. And then the last one is sort of informal and more intangible and definitely harder to get a qualification in, but it's just your ability to make friends and get stuff done. As an applied researcher, we don't offer much to the world. What we offer to the world is often through our partnership with the people who can do the thing, run the program, develop the intervention, collect the data, etc. And so to be a good applied researcher, you have to be good at making friends, and you have to be efficient on top of your stuff and able to get stuff done. So behavioral knowledge, methods and data skills, design, get shit done.
Great. Okay, thanks for that, Joey. Any other comments or thoughts on skills or what you might need to work in behavioral science in the UN?
I just
We're
wanted to
heading
add
over. Yeah, go for
one
it.
thought, quick thought. I mean, I second all that Joey said. I think one thing that is maybe sometimes underappreciated among academics is I think practical experience is also quite well regarded in the UN. I think research skills is super important, but I think there's many people who do research, and if you can combine this research with applied work, I mean, I worked at Google now before, and that I often, when I talk to people at UN, they find this super interesting because then you can have both things. So just an encouragement, people will hear in the call who also have more practical backgrounds, whereas in consulting design, that's often well regarded as well.
Great. Okay. So lots of different skill sets and experiences that are relevant. The UN is a very diverse space, depending on where you are and what you might need. Okay. So I think we're over time already. If there are any other comments from colleagues, no. I'll just put in the chat here again the link to all of our resources. So if you haven't already, the first link there is to the UN Behavioral Science Group. So join the group. That's the first and easiest and most comprehensive way to stay up to date with what we're doing. I'll also put here our email if you would like to send us an email about kind of what you are thinking, what you've been inspired by today. You can do that. So here, the email address. And with that, maybe we'll call it today. Thank you for submitting your responses into the Mentimeter. There's some really nice images that we have of kind of what colleagues think around the world of behavioral science and ways we can better engage with you. Thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to seeing you during Behavioral Science Week next week. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. I'll see you soon. Talk to you later. Bye for now.